Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I thought I would sit down and answer some of your questions about continuous provision in year one.
1, 2, 3.
I have never taught through continuous provision before. This is my first time doing it, and it's the first time our school has implemented it for year one. Before it was only like early years. For that reason, term one has very much been trial and error, finding out what works, what the children react well to. I thought I would tell you what I've done so far, what's worked well, what I'm sticking with, and what I'm going to do next term. So a bunch of you asked me some questions on Instagram, so I'm going to start off answering those, and then I'm sure I will just talk for England and tell you everything about the whole continuous provision in year one. So the first question is every lesson continuous provision? So not how I'm doing it. I'll kind of talk you through my timetable, and I think that was actually another question. Is like, what is my timetable? So obviously there's been a lot of gaps that they've missed because of all the COVID and learning from home and everything. So we are really focusing on language development this year. So we've got a few new things that we are putting into the timetable to kind of help with that. One thing is a scheme called Talk for Stories. So every day we read the same book, and like every single day there's like different activities to do with it or different ways you read the story. We always read the story, and then for example one day you talk about what was the problem and how it was resolved. Then there's like a freeze frame, so you tell them they're a character, for example Dave from Dogger, and like you're Dave, and then you kind of freeze throughout the story and they kind of show you how Dave might be feeling, and then you talk about the vocabulary and it kind of helps them a lot. Blah, blah, blah. There's like other things as well, like what would you do in that situation, and you talk through the story, and basically just very in-depth story time every single day. And then the following week we focus on certain parts of the story and key vocabulary, and we kind of have like a 10-minute vocab lesson every afternoon. So throughout the day there's a half an hour Talk for Stories slot, and then a 10-minute vocabulary slot in the afternoon. So that's 40 minutes of my day already. Also, to catch up with our phonics, we have been doing double phonics lessons the first term. We will not be doing that in term two. We just did that in the first term. So we follow the scheme Sounds Right. So we basically do half an hour in the morning, and then we did half an hour in the afternoon. So honestly I love teaching Sounds Right. So I don't mind as such, but it would be nice now in term two to have more time in the afternoon to do like more foundation subjects. So basically, back to continuous provision, we have our Sounds Right lesson, and then we go into the math session, and here we do a whole class input. They might use their whiteboards and do an activity together, or I'll just like have something up on my interactive whiteboard and we'll do something together, counting, la-di-da-da. We'll do a whole class input. That'll be about 10 minutes, and then I will send them off to continuous provision, and I will keep the groups that I'm working with, and then the TA will keep the groups they are working with, and then the rest are doing continuous provision. That's how it started. I'll get to that in a minute. Then obviously I would have snack time, break time. Then English, we do the exact same thing, whole class input, and then the continuous provision whilst we take groups. And then in the afternoon we don't have any continuous provision, we do discrete lessons. Obviously we were having Sounds Right every single day, so we didn't really have that much time left over in the afternoon. We did PE Monday and Tuesday. We'd have like a PHSC lesson, whole class science, whole class art, stuff like that. So to be honest, I feel like our afternoons are more structured than the mornings. That's kind of how it started. So we're only doing continuous provision in the morning. I feel like I could keep talking and end up answering all the questions, so I'm just going to stop myself, pick up the question and then answer it. So question 2, how do you make sure every child uses provision correctly and see it as learning time rather than play? This was obviously a huge challenge of mine when I first started, because they all just basically just think it's playtime, and I keep having to emphasize it's not playtime, it's learning time. We're going to do our learning activities. So a lot of repetition. And I did have to really like sit down and talk to them like, this is a time we're doing the activities that I've planned for you to do about our topic. It's not playtime, la di da. I did actually have like this huge cabinet where I put all the toys, and that's was all organised for golden time last year. I've had to like hide that so they don't just play with little ponies during the actual provision time. And I have been very clear on my expectations and kind of like, oh, you need to be able to do this and this by the end of the week. And I often, because it's quite a small area anyway, it's like a normal year one classroom but with continuous provision, so I can kind of see where the children are, what they've done, and they always show me their work at the end anyway, so I've got a good idea on who needs to do what next, and I just sort of guide them in the right direction, like, oh, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? And they're normally pretty good, most of them anyway, at just doing as I've asked, and they kind of get excited to do it anyway. Obviously you will have those children that kind of just stick to an area, and you just kind of have to like encourage them to do other things, and then they can go back to that area. The construction area and the arts and craft area are very popular, so I often have to just encourage certain children to move away from that area and give another child a chance, and then I want to see them do different things. So kind of linking to that question, I did actually try doing a timetable where I have each group would be designated an area of provision, and then they'd have to stay there the whole time, and then as an extension there was other things. I did it for a couple days. Some days it worked really well, but then there were some days where certain groups kind of didn't get on with that area and they didn't really last the whole hour, so I ended up ditching that completely. But hey, it's all about learning and seeing what works with the children. Perhaps that would work for the children in your class, but then again, I guess you don't want it too structured because they would be stuck with the same people the whole time. So there's like pros and cons to it. But for a couple of days, a lot of children were getting a lot of areas. So that was really good. And moments were really calm as well because they were all just sat down in their areas. And it was nice to see them mixing with not just their friends but with the people in their groups. And I have mixed ability groups too, so it kind of worked out well. But it just, for a very short period of time, I feel like an hour or 40 minutes is too long for one area, so it's much better to allow them that freedom in the session to go to a couple of areas. So that was something I tried to do, and then shortly after I tried something else and that worked out fantastic, so I'll talk you through that now, and it kind of links to this question. How are you going to ease them back into formal lessons? Currently a year 2 teacher after children had continuous provision and I have to train them to do everything. And COVID, the gaps aren't used to normal lessons. And I love continuous provision, but it's proven tricky now. I can definitely relate to that. It being tricky and all the gaps they've missed. So basically what I'm doing now, and what's worked really well for my class, is I have a timetable. I'll put it on the screen now, and basically I have 5 groups, and I've split those 5 groups into the teacher group, the TA group, independent, and then the other 2 groups have continuous provision during that time. So for example, on like Monday, I can't remember what my timetable is, but Monday I might have the yellow group and the TA might have the green group, and then the blue group might be on their own doing an activity that they can do independently, and they have to stay at their table the whole session until they've done the activity, and then when they finished it they can join the others doing continuous provision. Then those 2 groups that don't have a specific activity are doing the continuous provision, and actually it's really helped the classroom calm down. At the beginning, obviously like the first week, it was just me, my group, and then the 4 other groups were doing continuous provision, and it's quite a small classroom in comparison to a lot of continuous provision classrooms. We don't really have all these different nooks and crannies and different areas, so it got quite loud when I was working with a group. It's now got so much better because there isn't really that many children doing continuous provision at the same time, because at the moment 3 of the groups were busy doing something at a table, so only 2 were around and it was reasonably calm. So answering that question, during the term we have slowly made it more structured. We didn't start with every day doing a whole class input in both maths and English. We've now gradually led up to that. So now they're kind of used to sitting down on the carpet for a longer period of time, doing kind of like the beginning of the lesson together, and then they know exactly what they need to do afterwards. Also, by slowly decreasing the amount of groups that are doing continuous provision, that's kind of eased them into it, slowly increasing their expectations and making it more structured. So now that we have only 2 groups doing continuous provision, the other 3 groups, they know the expectation that they need to be like concentrating, focus at their table, and it kind of hints towards a more formal lesson like we used to do. So moving on from that, we are now going to start doing 2 independent tables and 2 with an adult, and then 1 doing the continuous provision. That's what we are starting for term 2. So that's slowly easing them into less and less continuous provision, and then probably by the end of the term we'll start maybe having some whole class English lessons. I know we did do a couple of whole class English lessons last term when we did our writing assessment. One lesson we all went to the forest together and we kind of did some role play ready for our writing assessment, and then another lesson we did a whole class like planning lesson, but then we got back into the groups to do the actual writing. And actually that went really well. They really responded well to the whole class lesson, so I think that's something we're going to do again next term, and then possibly term 3 we may get back into full lessons and maybe do continuous provision in the afternoon, but we're not too sure at the moment. We're kind of just like playing it by ear. One question I was asked was, can we see a video tour of your classroom? So obviously I did a whole classroom tour at the beginning of the year. If you saw my previous vlog, you will know that I actually changed it around quite a bit whilst I was kind of experimenting with my classroom. I started off this kind of layout. I'll try and put it on screen as we talk, and I just realised that when we added the independent table I needed some more space, so we had to move some things around and make space for that extra table. So I had that layout for quite a long time, and then I just recently changed it again to make another independent table. So I've had to like move around one area and switch some tables up. So now that I have 2 independent tables, 2 teacher-led tables, like TA and teacher, and then my maths continuous provision areas got a little bit smaller because I needed the tables for the independent activity, and then my writing area, role play, construction and art area, that's all the same at the moment. So I really had to move my class around so many times, but I think it's finally ready for the new term and I think it's going to work well. The next question is, do you have 2 classes together, so 16 in one room, or just 1? So as you may know, I have a 2-form entry school, so we have 2 year 1 classes and we like do the planning together and everything, and sometimes we may come together and do a lesson together, or we like go outside sometimes together, but we don't interact during our lesson time generally. It's not like a free flow one classroom to the other. It's kind of like a twin classroom. So we do everything the same as the other classroom. So both classrooms have the art area, both classrooms have the construction area. It's 2 completely separate classrooms. We don't really allow them to mix, because also we don't really have conjoining doors. The next question I've kind of mentioned a little bit, but what areas are the most popular and unpopular? So when I started, I can definitely confirm that writing area was the least popular area. I guess they just weren't as confident with their writing. It was really early on, and when there's like fun crafts and construction and things, they didn't really want to choose writing over that. However, I have sort of kind of bribed them with stickers and like a lot of positive praise when children do the writing activity. and I'm just like blown away when they do it. So a lot more children are choosing to do it now. I don't know whether it's for the positive praise or the stickers, but sometimes a bit of both. But also they are just becoming more confident now, so they're kind of using it a bit more, but still it is probably the least popular area, like out of choice. They only really go most of the time because I kind of encourage it a lot. My most popular area is probably the role play area, just because it was so new. It's kind of dying out a little bit now, and it's like the art area and the construction area is kind of joining them up that level. A lot of them choose those 3 areas the most, but they do still love the home corner, and I really try and encourage them to do the writing activities and things, but I also want them to kind of like do a bit of role playing, work on the language too, so it's kind of like a balance between the two. A lot of them do have like meal plans and they write little shopping lists. They tend to not really write telephone messages. I've really tried to encourage them to do this, but they're just not that bothered. It's still there and they love playing with the phone. They just don't really enjoy writing their messages. My favourite area is the art area. I just really enjoy planning art activities and having it all laid out. Also, it's just very aesthetically pleasing for me. I love my trolley with all my supplies and I often do like a little poster with inspiration and like the activity challenge. I just really love setting that area up, and so many children really love doing it as well. And because I have this really easy art display where I just like have these pegs. I have pegs glued on to some frames, so I really easily just mix and match the display. Every week I change it up. They sometimes take it home, and then the following week we keep putting up the new work, and it's just an ongoing working wall, I guess, or like a celebration of all the work they've done this week. And I just really enjoy managing the whole thing, and it's really nice to see lots of different work up so quickly as well. So this is a really important question, and it's how are you ensuring progress? So obviously now that we have more structure, it's a bit more set in stone. We can kind of guarantee more progress because it's more controlled and we're doing more teacher-led and adult-led activities. They're kind of doing their independent activity and helping each other. And every single day we do 2, like we have our maths and our English inputs. So that is a lot of guidance and help towards them, a lot of teaching and a lot of focused work, should I say. It's less free flow, so it's more structured learning. I admit that when I first started I was really worried that we wouldn't cover enough, because out of all the things that we need to learn doing daily maths and English, we covered so much last year, and I was really worried about that. But to be honest, it's kind of helped more in a way, because when we are doing a specific writing focus, for example like capital letters or full stops, when we're working with a select number of children, and we could really focus on them, because what often happens is when you're doing a whole class activity, and like last year when we did whole class English lessons, it was really hard to get around everyone when there were some children that just needed so much support. And obviously we were trying to make them independent as well, but you just do it as a teacher. You know who needs the most help and you go to them. It's just a natural instinct. So now it's kind of been nice to give those children that don't always have that much attention, sadly. I've been having really focused like 1 to 5 group activities, and you can just really focus on those children. And we have like writing targets, and I feel like I'm getting through the writing targets more because I'm having more like one-to-one moments with these children and really focusing on what they need to. So that part I am really enjoying. I do fear a little bit about their independence, and when we do go back to whole class lessons, how they will react to it. But I'm hoping that we give them this foundation of understanding, and all the basics will be really firm before we get to that point, and so they kind of have the confidence to go off on their own like a little bird leaving the nest. I'm hoping it's going to be like that. The last question I have is, how has continuous provision changed the classroom dynamic? So there's a lot of different ways I could answer that question, and I would say obviously in comparison to my class last year, I'm obviously doing formal learning and not continuous provision, it's a lot more busy as it started. But in a way it's kind of nice because there's a lot more conversation going on, a lot more language development. They're kind of mixing with different children. They're not just talking to the people on their table every single day. They are really mixing with the other groups. Obviously before we made it more structured, it was more so. Now they're kind of sticking more to their groups. Apart from when they do the continuous provision, it was like the two different groups were able to mix. But I just feel like they had a good start where they were mixing with so many children in the class, and it was a really good way to kind of build up some relationships with the different children. And also, as they've had so much focus time with both myself and the TA doing the focus activities in maths and English, that's really helped build up both the relationship too, and kind of encourage them to have more confidence and like belief in themselves, and not shy away so much from answering questions because they're in such a small group. So that's really helped too. After this term, I do feel very confident in what's to come, and I'm really pleased with how much progress they've made so far, and the basics that they've learned is so strong, I think, in comparison to last year. I think before we were rushing through it so quickly and they were focusing on all these more advanced things, but they kind of forgot about the basics. So they were writing these really detailed paragraphs and doing all this amazing work, but they would forget their full stops, they would forget their capital letters. So we've really had time to really drum in those basics, and I think they're very confident on them now. So I'm looking forward to see how that really solid start's going to impact the rest. I definitely went on a tangent there. I think I answered the question. A couple of my favourite things about doing continuous provision is, as I said before, the more focused groups and having that more one-to-one or smaller groups and focusing on certain things. I can really kind of there's more differentiation because I can really sit down with those children and I know, and sometimes rather than just doing like our three-way differentiation like we plan, I can kind of give them more challenges as and when they need it because I'm working with them closer, if that makes sense. And for example, like I can just get out their targets and see what they need to work on and like just tell them on the spot, like, oh, we'll sort this out, we'll do this. And then also I love doing live feedback and live marking the lessons, but sometimes it's not always as easy to go around the whole class and give everyone live feedback and write in their books and do that. But obviously because there's a smaller group, I have it up to 6 children, I can mark as I go, and I don't really find myself doing that much marking after lesson because I do most of it in the lesson whilst I'm giving them that feedback, and it's really helped with them making corrections and improvements too. So I can just quickly write down a challenge which they can then do there, or if they're doing a certain letter formation wrong or a spelling they need to practice, I can write it in their books and they can do it on the spot rather than like 2 days later, or sometimes they just miss it. So in that way my marking is more effective, the targets are being used way more, and that's just very smooth, and I really enjoy that. I am also really enjoying the planning and making all these different areas and having them activities out and planning all these different things to do, and it's been really different, but I've actually really enjoyed that. I was worried about the tidy up, but again that was fine. I've not had to really do much tidying up after school. They're kind of just trained now. I've taught 2 full years of year 1 formally, I mean with gaps because of COVID, and this is the first year I've done it with continuous provision, and I'm trying to compare the two, and it's hard because of different situations, different children, different gaps and things, but I do really enjoy the idea of starting with continuous provision and just slowly building up the expectations. Obviously some classes may kind of react differently, they may need more structure from the beginning, but I think it's really worked the way we've done it. I feel like maybe I would have started with the independent group sooner, maybe if I was to do this next year if there's no gaps, but at the moment, yeah, I just think it's worked really well and I'm actually really enjoying it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for asking me these questions on Instagram. If you want to be involved with the next Q&A, be sure to follow me. I often ask you guys for input for my videos, so if you want to be more involved in that, then yeah, go ahead, give me a follow. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone!